Hello everyone, welcome to part 4. On the last episode this is the stage we'd got to with a waterproof membrane and a temporary door and window. Today we're focusing on looking at the inside, specifically putting in the insulation, the inner wall and looking at the soundproofing process itself. For the insulation we're using rigid Rockwool RW3 slabs. These are 75mm thick with a density of 60 kilograms per cubic metre. There are other variations available, including thicker and more dense, but these are of course more expensive. We found that for the price, the RW3 provided the most consistent absorption coefficient rating across the frequency range. The fact that these are rigid slabs actually make them really easy to work with. You simply cut them out and slot them directly into the stud wall. What you're seeing here are the slabs of insulation slotted directly into the outer stud wall. These butt right up against the outer layer of OSB. This is actually really interesting stuff. If you go and stand close to it and put your ear right near it, you hear a distinct loss in the sound around you. It's quite cool. With 2 layers of this stuff, it goes without saying that no one will hear me scream when things don't go well. In the roof cavity where the boards meet the top of the walls, we've used expanding soundproof foam to fill the gaps. We're now getting ready to put the inner studs in place. Like we did last time, we're using a layer of glue and sealant on the ground, onto which we'll place the studs. Just like we did with the outer layer, we simply drop the stud onto those pegs. We were extremely relieved to see that our measurements worked and the window and door gaps lined up. This double-layered system is integral to the soundproofing process, so let's take a closer look at how this works. We start out with the concrete base. We saw how this was constructed in the first episode. Onto this, we build the outer frame from the studs. We saw the construction process of this in the second episode. Each straight line here represents the layer of stud wall with the insulation. On the outside of this, we add the OSB. This provides the outer structural layer to which we'll add the final cladding later on. Inside of all of this, we build a separate, completely isolated inner stud structure. This again consists of 4 walls and a ceiling. None of these touch or make contact with the outer layer. Again, the black lines here represent the stud walls themselves, complete with the insulation. On the inside of this internal stud room, we add first 1 layer, then a second layer of plasterboard. These 2 layers of plasterboard provide the density for the internal layer. All of the highlighted area here is simply empty space. This is very important for the soundproofing process. Using my Photoshop skills, easily the equal of any mildly intelligent 13-year-old, let's take a closer look at the wall construction. The main structure of the building consists of 2 vertical stud walls. Each stud contains the thick Rockwool insulation. There's an air cavity of about 1 inch separating the 2 stud walls. On the outside of this, a thick structural layer of oriented strand board is added. This provides the external structural layer. If you can remember, we added a waterproof membrane to this and we will eventually fit the finalised cladding directly to this. On the inside, we add 2 layers of plasterboard. As you can see, there is no boarding of any kind within the internal cavity. This creates what's known as a 2-leaf or a double-leaf structure. In soundproofing terms, that's proven to be the most effective method of keeping sound in or out. Rod Gervais is a world-leading authority on soundproofing. In his book, Home Recording Studio, Build It Like the Pros, he talks about how a 2-leaf system like this is up to 8 times more effective than a 4-leaf system whereby you place boards on the inside of the air cavity. In this type of wall assembly, sometimes called a mass-air-mass system, the air between the leaf walls becomes a spring. Sound pressure builds up within the space striking the wall surface and causing it to deflect inwards. This compresses the air within the space, which causes the outer surface to deflect outwards. So, the compressed air becomes a spring. We'll match this 2-leaf system with the windows, having the outer window, an air gap, and an inner window, but we'll look at that in a future episode when we install the windows themselves. With these inner studs in place, we insulate it in just the same way we did with the outer studs. We cut the slab to size and simply slot it in. Slabs of insulation can also fill the cavities where the roof meets the walls. These just sit in front of the foamed areas. Things are starting to take shape. You can see these square areas on the roof. These also need filling with slabs of insulation. We simply use an interference fit, making the slabs slightly bigger than the space to allow them to hold themselves in position. However, seeing as we won't have access to these once the inner ceiling is in place, we'll fit some strips of wood around the border to hold them in place, just in case. Here you can see we've started work on the internal ceiling. These crossbeams connect the two side walls and essentially act as horizontal studs, and we'll build it just in the same way. Noggins will join them and we'll put insulation in just like we did on the roof above. Structurally, we're nearly there. On the next episode we'll take a look at some of the finishing touches for the overall structure. These will be things like the ventilation, the windows and doors, and finishing off the roof. We'll also take a look at how we're powering everything. So stay tuned and I'll see you on the next episode.